Welcome to our goal setting playing with intention masterclass. I'm gonna dig in right away, and if hello, thank you for turning your cameras on. Good to see you. So I'll dig in right away. Basically, we're here today to just get really clear on both our long-term and our short-term goals in terms of our flute playing. And the overall goal for the class itself is to just walk away with an idea of how to schedule your practice sessions based on what your goals are. And it's going to help you propel you in the right direction forward instead of just kind of meandering with our practice sessions, which can happen. All right, and just housekeeping, if you have any questions or thoughts or ideas, you can either try and raise your hand and get my attention, or you're welcome to post them in the chat and I'll answer as we go along. So feel free to answer or to ask questions, or there's going to be a lot of me asking you guys questions. So if you want to share any of your answers, you're more than welcome to do that in the chat, or again, you can put up your hand and share live as well. Totally up to you and your comfort level. So let's see here. Yeah, okay. So getting clear on what your goals are is important for two major reasons. Knowing what you're working towards is going to help you stay on track to, like I said, balance out your practice sessions so that we're not meandering. You're going to avoid hyper-focusing on any particular skill or piece, which is really easy to do. You're going to avoid aimless practice sessions where you don't really know what to practice or why. You're just kind of following maybe a teacher's instructions or instructions you've seen online. So this is just going to help you focus in. And then knowing your big why, so why you're playing the flute in the first place, we're going to spend some time on that in the beginning, is going to help you avoid burnout and perfectionism, two things that I suffered from greatly in my youth. So you'll be more likely to actually take breaks, take care of your mental health if you have a long-term positive goal in mind. And if you're only working sort of towards the next big recital or competition or masterclass or whatever it is, you're going to lose sight of the bigger picture and get stuck in the need to play perfectly or sort of prove yourself. Okay? Knowing your big why is going to help you keep perspective when you're nervous, frustrated, or stuck, which happens to all of us, and also when things don't go as planned. So maybe you get injured or you have an illness or an unforeseen circumstance, etc. So, as we all know, it takes years to actually master the skills that we need to play the flute. So if you're able to put into perspective sort of where you are in the framework of your long-term goals and your expectations, the expectations you have of yourself are going to stay more realistic because you know that it's going to take a long time to get there. Now, it's also going to help you maintain your confidence in the face of rejections and failure, which is really just, unfortunately, part and parcel of being a musician. You're probably going to make mistakes or have moments that don't go your way. So remembering why you attempted this failed experience, be it an audition or a terrible recital or playing in your local band or orchestra or anything it is that's not really working out for you, is going to help you keep perspective. You're going to be able to recover from the pain of that failure sooner. And you'll remember that it's just part of the process and you can learn from the experience as you look towards your next short-term goal. Okay, so this is why we're doing this goals class to begin with, okay? So I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself for any of you who don't know who I am. So I'm one of the co-founders of Green Banana Flute Studios, and I've been playing with the Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra this is my 20th season that I just started. So I've been professional for a while. Initially, I chose the flute merely because I had to pick an instrument for band class when I was 12 and my older sister played the flute, so it seemed like a no-brainer to me. But I quickly realized that the flute allowed me to express myself through my breath, and it came pretty naturally to me. Unfortunately, I fell pretty quickly into perfectionism, and my practice sessions became really obsessive. And so I practiced for hours on end on really, really difficult repertoire, and it just packed a ton of tension into my playing. I was constantly berating myself, kind of putting myself down, and I just felt frustrated that I could never really meet my own perfectionist standards. I didn't sound how I wanted to, no matter how much I practiced or how much I tried. Performances became about just pressure and judgment rather than joy. And after my university degree, I was so burned out that I actually quit playing the flute for 6 months, thinking that I wasn't even going to pick it up again. But I did return to it. I couldn't stay away, as I'm sure many of you have experienced. The flute pulled me right back in, and I had to remind myself of why I was playing it in the first place. What matters to me is expression, connection, and just the feeling of transcendence that music can bring. And it's supposed to be fun. That's why we played it in the first place, right? I made a very clear goal of winning an orchestra job within 2 years. I told myself, okay, you have 2 years to get a job. And you know what? If not, find something else to do, find a new career, and that's okay. And so everything I did started to become a way of learning and improving in those 2 years instead of like this pass or fail mindset. Oh my gosh, I lost that competition. I'm a loser. I should quit. Became, okay, what didn't go well? What did go well? And I mapped out a reasonable way to prepare for auditions, making schedules for excerpts and repertoire, and consistently addressing fundamentals so that they would also improve over time instead of just obsessively practicing repertoire. Okay, I made sure to celebrate my wins and to be more subjective about what was working and what was not working. So now that I've been in the orchestra job for almost 20 years, I still use goal setting to keep myself on track so that I don't get stale or just kind of burnt out. I make short-term goals to keep me motivated to practice because these days it's very easy for me to coast and I'd rather stay as on top of my playing instead of just getting by. I map out exactly how I want to achieve my goals, stick to the plan as much as possible while allowing for some flexibility. And I make sure to remember my big why, so that playing the flute, especially with other people, allows me to experience that incredible feeling of transcendence and brings me sort of into the moment in a way that nothing else does. I don't know, some people meditate, I just play my flute with other people, and that's what works for me. Okay, especially in a world that expects us to have such a short attention span, and I have two very small children with a ton of hustle and bustle. So remembering why I play the flute and that it just brings me into that really special place helps me to stay on track with my goals. All right, that was the shortest version of my story that I could come up with. Hopefully it wasn't too long. All right, so now I want you to focus in. We're gonna do a series of sort of exercises. If you want, you could grab a pen and paper if that helps you to kind of take notes about your own journey and what your goals are. But I want to start with your big why. So I talked about why I play the flute, but take a minute, and you can always go back later when the class is done and think about this in more depth. But take a moment. Why did you choose? What was it about the flute that made you pick it up in the first place? Whether it was last year, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, it doesn't matter. If you can remember, like what made you pick the flute to begin with? Sometimes even just connecting with that can really help you remember, your big why.
Wow. It
Okay.
was pretty.
I'm not sure how to mute. If you can mute yourself, I'm not sure. I'm not good enough at Zoom to mute people. If it becomes a problem, I will figure it out. Okay, then if the number two question, if there was no obstacles in your way, so let's say your technique was flawless and your tone was exactly how you wanted to sound, and you could play literally any piece in the world and do anything you wanted with the flute, and if you could wave your magic wand and it just happened for you, what would that look like to you? What would you really want to do? So without the excuse of, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I started too late. Oh, whatever the excuses are. If there's no obstacles, what would you like to see with your flute playing? And then, why are you working so hard to improve right now? If you came to this goals class, I assume that you're practicing your flute or whatever instrument and you're working hard to improve, what is keeping you doing that right now? It's sort of what is the why behind that? And we have, think ahead 5, 10, 20 years. Maybe that's not applicable, but what if you just look to the future, more long term, what would make you the happiest? If you see yourself playing your flute, where are you? Are you playing with your friends? Are you playing at church? Are you playing in an orchestra? Are you playing in a community band? Are you just playing, for yourself in your basement? And that's what makes you the happiest, and that's your goal. Whatever it is, everyone has their own reasons for doing it. Just getting real clarity on why we're playing the flute right now and where we're trying to go with it. Okay, I'll give you just a minute. If anyone wants to share in the chat any of the things that they've come up with, you're welcome to, but no pressure. All right. So next, I'm going to just kind of fly through, but if you guys need more time, just let me know, or if we can always discuss it a little bit more at the end. So the next step in this exercise, now that we have maybe a little bit more clarity on why we're playing the flute to begin with, is, your biggest and broadest goals. So here's some questions to kind of get you going. So, do you want to be a professional musician, or do you want to just be the best? We say amateur. I hate that word. It's kind of like it seems like either you're professional or amateur. There's like a million things in between. But sort of what does that look like for you? Do you want to be playing professional gigs where you're getting paid? Do you want an orchestra job? Or are you playing? We hear a lot from people who are playing in sort of their community bands or orchestras and thinking, oh, I just can't keep up. There's some things that are holding me back. So what is your big goal in terms of your flute playing? And then, what type of player do you need to become? So if, say, your goal is to become an international soloist, okay, which was mine when I was a naive, 15-year-old kid thinking that was a real thing that I could do. That was my goal. So what kind of player would you need to become an international soloist? Well, you'd have to be extraordinarily extroverted in the way that you play. You have to be really confident on stage. You have to almost be an actor or actress, you might be having the worst day of your life, but if you're a soloist and people have paid a whole lot of money to come see you play, you got to be really, just as if you're the happiest person to be there alive. So a little bit of acting involved. Or if you want to be more of like playing in a community band, what kind of player do you need to be? You need to be someone who's very flexible. You need to be someone who's listening and in tune with the people, not just in tune like flute wise, but like in tune with what's happening around you, not only with the other flutes, but maybe with some of the other instruments. If you want to become like a chamber musician, or you want to play, you're starting a flute and guitar duet or something, what kind of player does that need to be for you? And then we call it character qualities. So, if you're going to be part of a full-time ensemble, punctual, right? You need to be on time. There's huge union rules even about being on time for these kinds of things. And we say consistent and organized. So if you're doing a lot of auditions, you need to be really consistent with your practicing. I mean, if you want to have any goals achieved, you probably have to be pretty consistent with your practicing, but depending on the level of your goals, how much consistency do you need? How organized do you need to be? If you're just playing with church for church on Sundays, you still need to be organized in the way that you're preparing for these so that you feel really confident and you're not so nervous that you're just focusing on your nerves. You can actually have that moment of transcendence when you're playing and people are really like listening to you and enjoying what you're doing, right? Okay, I'm going to take a minute to go through the chat here. So okay, so some of the goals. I would love to entertain friends or play together with other musicians. Absolutely. Playing with other musicians to me takes the cake of music making. Okay. So playing the flute was pretty to look at and to hear. I want to play an orchestra on some level, and solos for something right now, get into the flute choir. Absolutely. That's a great goal. Okay, yeah, I remember this. So Drake saw a 1998 rock concert from, I don't know why it's blocking, the Golden Earring. The singer playing the flute impressed me so much, I wanted to play like him. And he's been playing for just a year, but it's such a great inspirational story. Yeah, you want to be a rock star. That's awesome. My parents wanted me to learn the clarinet, but it didn't appeal to me. I preferred the sound of the flute. Right on. Me too. They push so many people into the clarinet, and I don't know why. The flute should be the #1 choice, I really think. Okay, at this point in the life, I'm just trying not to lose facility and endurance. I understand that. So I'm happy enough with my sound in order to feel confident with playing with others. I get that. I'm in my mid-40s, and I do notice it takes about twice as much to practice the same thing that I could fly through in my 20s and 30s. So the older you get, it's just about maintain. It's almost like muscle mass too. You have to just kind of maintain at a certain age. You're probably not going to gain a ton of muscle, but maintaining is important too. Be the best teacher I can be and enjoy the heck out of playing. I love that. I play in community band and flute choirs and jazz. Yes. I'm 62. I used to play when I was young. I picked up the flute again last March and joined a community orchestra. That is awesome. Okay, in my 70s, great. You know, it's never too late to be playing the flute. It's never too late to learn it. It's never too late to pick it back up again. So thank you everyone for sharing. Those are great reasons for your big whys and kind of what your goals are long term. All right, let's move on. So knowing those big and broad goals, then we can narrow it down to what your long-term goals are for the next 3 to 4 years. So we're kind of paring it down. So in order to achieve some of the goals that you've shared here, do you know which fundamental skills you need to improve to reach those goals? So we're wanting to play in community orchestras. We're wanting to be rock stars. We're wanting to just maintain our skills. What are the specific fundamentals that might be your weaker fundamentals that are holding you back? Do you have tension in your fingers? Is your high register kind of squeaky, or you find you're really out of tune? Do you always play C sharp, horrendously sharp? Things like that. So pinpointing exactly which fundamentals, that not in a self-berating way, just in an open way. This is exactly what's kind of holding me back right now to reaching those goals in the next 3-4 years. Yeah, technique, counting, sound. I hear it. Yes, counting's another big one for sure. Okay, is there any specific repertoire you should be learning, to achieve these next 3 to 4 year goals? So maybe if you're at the beginning of this whole journey, in the next 3 to 4 years, maybe you're trying to get into a university or master's degree program. So what's the repertoire you need to learn in order to reach that goal? If you're later in life and you're trying to play more with community orchestras, is there an audition process that requires specific repertoire? Sometimes that's like a slow piece and a fast piece, like 2 contrasting works or something like that. So, or even just, we have some members in our groups that are looking to, reconnect and play freelance in an orchestra. So we're saying, okay, well then you should be working on some excerpts right now. Maybe you're not planning to do this tomorrow, but if in the next couple years you want to be playing more on a professional level, then you should be learning some orchestral excerpts, because that will be required for you to kind of get through that door. Do you have auditions, competitions, that kind of thing? You get the drill. And then, so mental skills is anything the umbrella of mental skills in our world here is anything that is sort of in your mind. So we're talking about performance anxiety and nerves. We're talking about how you talk to yourself, how you kind of organize the way that you learn pieces. So do you just learn the notes and rhythms first and think, oh, I'll add the dynamics later, that kind of thing? So maybe strengthening the mental skill of organizing how you learn a piece. What else? Expectations that you hold for yourself, perfectionism, all this kind of stuff. So is there anything in the mental side of your life? We're not psychologists, but we do like to address this because it's a huge part of being a musician. So are there any skills in here that maybe need some addressing to reach these goals in the next 3 to 4 years? And then, once you have kind of your list, do your answers to all these questions align with the big goals that you outlined in the previous section? So if you're like, well, my big goal is to play in a professional orchestra, but that's really scary, so I'm just going to ignore that and make sure I learn this Louis Gahn piece because I've always really liked it, then it's not really in line with what your long-term goal is, right? So we're trying to keep this all focused and funneling towards your long-term goals, if that makes sense. All right, let's go through the chat here. Okay. Yeah, okay. It doesn't matter if you're far from playing in an orchestra. Your goals are your goals, and we'll get to the more short-term goals, but I think just being realistic about what your goals are is part of the process. So your goals don't have to be what other people's goals are. They should be just clear to you and stuck in your mind. And they can always change too. It's not like you have to stick to your long-term goals, but everyone kind of has an idea of I picked up the flute because I wanted to do X, Y, and Z, and that's kind of, sorry, Canadian here, Z. But yeah, that's why you kind of want to keep that in the back of your mind when doing this process, okay? Trying to get more breath back, endurance. Yep, those are very common fundamentals to be focusing on. Hi Terry, greetings from Toronto, greetings back from Calgary. My family does not like my exercising. That can be a challenge too. So maybe just finding practice areas that where you're not bugging too many people. Because if you have that burden of you're annoying people, it's kind of hard to play expressively and in an outgoing way as well. But I did see that, was it you, I think, who posted on Facebook that you have this great place in your office that you can practice.
Yeah, indeed. And tomorrow I'm going to play there as well.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, it looked beautiful. So that, just practice more
Yeah,
there
with
and you'll be good.
a beautiful sound.
Yes, it looks really, really resonant would be the word I'm looking for. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
and I bought a standard.
Sorry?
I bought a standard.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Okay, moving on. And then, so, love the discussion on mental hardships. We are our hardest critics for sure. I work with my middle school and high school kids to laugh at themselves when needed. That's great. It is called playing the flute. Very good. I love that. Okay, I only play for pleasure as my anxiety stops me from doing anything else. Interesting. I would like to do it well and get through the pieces without making mistakes. For sure. Just keep in mind that working through anxiety, it can be a very long-term process as well. And so I don't want you to make your big, broad goals too small. The anxiety can be addressed. So think with it, when I said in the beginning, what are your biggest, broadest goals? What if you had no obstacles? Let's say if you had no anxiety whatsoever about what people thought or how it would go, what would you do? And keep that in the back of your mind when you're making these goals. I'm not saying you have to like go perform in public tomorrow, and it's still a really great goal to just play for yourself. But I just want you to think about, if we could fix that anxiety, what would that look for you long term, and what would be possible? All right. Okay, let's move on. So, short-term goals. So what are your goals for just the next year, thinking about everything that we've talked about? Again, what are the fundamentals you're going to work on? Are there repertoire deadlines? You have an audition on such and such a day, or whatever it is that you need, or you're playing this piece with your band that's really difficult on, the concerts in December. Are you playing in church, for Christmas, whatever it is. Okay, so keeping in mind what your repertoire deadlines are, the fundamentals you want to strengthen, improving your practice structure. So we'll talk about that more. And again, with the mental skills. So if you're thinking about just the next year and what you have on the docket for that year, what would you need to improve in order to, for that to go well? Okay, what do we have here? Yes, I love that. Yeah. One of the suggestions for performing with anxiety is like find a kind of audience like a nursing home or older population. They really do love anything you play. Though I have a funny story about that because I was playing, it's the flute and it can be pretty loud. And I played it in a nursing home, and I looked over and one of the women was like, she was not enjoying it. So it's not a guarantee, but okay. So keeping that in mind for the next year, as you can see where we're going with this, now we're breaking it down to the next month. So if you've made some notes about, okay, this is what I ideally would do, this is what I have in mind for the next year. Okay, so then what does the next month look like? If you were to practice all the different pieces, all the different fundamentals, all the different mental skills, how would you organize that and make sure everything's being addressed in the month of like September, October kind of thing? All right. Is everything that you've listed in all these previous questions covered some way in the next month? So if you have, let's say you have an enormous amount of repertoire that you need to learn, then how are you going to organize it that you're rotating through everything that you can learn? If you're like, I don't have any repertoire and I don't even know what to do, how can you pick some repertoire that's reasonable for you to learn, like a little bit of a challenge perhaps, but not so difficult that it's way too daunting, something that's kind of the right mix? Can you pick some etudes or some pieces that will help you work on all these fundamental skills that need a little bit of addressing? And then in terms of the mental skills, how can we work that into the practice? What are some affirmations you can tell yourself every time you pick up your flute? Like, I'm strong, I can do this, I don't care what other people think, whatever's like, applicable to you in terms of mental things that might be holding you back with anxiety, performance anxiety, all of that. How are you going to organize that within the next month? Okay, and then as you'll probably have guessed, then you do it then you can organize your schedule for the week. Okay, so we work with people a lot to create a weekly schedule, knowing what all their goals are and just kind of always tweaking it, making sure that everything's being covered and you're not over focusing on one thing or under focusing on something else and kind of ignoring this thing that we're like, we know that you really want to work on your breathing, but you're not doing anything to address that in your weekly schedule. Like, let's make sure that's in there somewhere. Okay. So then this is just, you can, I don't know, screenshot this or whatever. This is a list you can make to create your schedule. It's just a template that we have. Okay. So in over here, this is where we're making those high priority long-term goals. So you know that your weakest fundamental skills are, this, and this. You can list them out here so that you're keeping them at the forefront of your mind. This is what you need to be working on. And then if there's any major deadlines, like I said, this could be for anyone with professional aspirations, this could be auditions, master classes, competitions, anything like that. But even those playing more in community orchestras, thank you for that, Kim. Thank you for sharing that screenshot. That's awesome. It's in the chat for anyone who wants to keep it. Yeah, so if there's any deadlines, you write them here so that they're just like right at the forefront of your mind, and that you're keeping your eye on the prize when it comes to that. And then again, just doing the same thing with the monthly goals. So just specifically, specific deadlines. Again, it could even just be master classes, an upcoming lesson with a teacher, or like a group masterclass online, anything like that. If you know it's coming up and there's a date, just throw it here so that you have it at the forefront of your mind. And then what we like to do with people is to kind of rank both your sound and technical fundamentals in terms of what the weakest are. Again, not in a self-berating, like I suck at this kind of way, more like I know this is holding me back. And so this is where the bulk of my focus should be in my practice session. So for example, sound fundamentals. So maybe pitch is a big one, right? So you might say, okay, I feel really out of tune when I'm playing with other people. I really want to work on this. This is going to be in my number one. I'm going to find some drone exercises, or I'm going to find some different ways of playing with other people, playing with piano more, whatever it is. You're going to find some ways to address that. So that could be intonation. Number two could be, let's say you struggle playing quietly in the high register. Okay, so you could put that here as a very specific sound fundamental that is bothering you. If you're more of a beginner, this might just be playing in the high register at all. Maybe the high register is a challenge for you, and so you want to get more consistent in your sound up there. That could be number two. Number three could be like vibrato. Either you're learning vibrato, or maybe this is something that you've always struggled with or you don't understand. This could be, the third one. So ranking, this is your number one, sort of your weakest that you want to spend the most time on. Little bit less time, little bit less time. Okay, and choosing just your top three so that you're staying focused on the most important ones. And then it's going to be the same with technical. So maybe 3-octave scales are just often that's going to be your number one, because most people struggle with the high register, the highest register playing fast, and the very lowest register playing fast. So you might want to be addressing either of those registers. Maybe it's articulation. Do you double tongue? Maybe you don't. Maybe you do. Maybe you need it to be faster. Maybe you need it to be slower, right? What else? Someone said counting. This would be sort of another technical fundamental. So rhythm, counting. Are there exercises you can do? Are there apps you can download? Do you have a metronome, and are you using it? Can you add that into your technical fundamental practice? Okay. So again, identifying the top three weakest. And then in terms of repertoire, so we always recommend that you start your practice sessions with your sound and your technical fundamentals. And then what is the repertoire that from your high, long-term goals and your monthly goals, what is the repertoire you need to learn? Okay, etudes, studies, pieces, excerpts, this is like band, ensemble parts, band music, orchestra music, all of that stuff. You can list it out here. And then keeping in mind your sound fundamentals and your technical fundamentals, having an approach to all this repertoire that keeps all those fundamentals in mind so that you're improving them constantly, this is how you're going to achieve some of those goals. Okay, can you give some examples of sound and technical fundamentals? Okay, I feel like I did, but let's say, okay, so sound fundamentals. So let's say you're having difficulty playing in the, like quietly in the high register. That would be a specific sound fundamental that is weak. You know, if every time you play in the high register, you can only do it at a quadruple forte, then there's something awry. So what I would suggest is that you do an exercise daily, just for a few minutes at a day, that would help you. So if you're trying to play quietly in the high register, it's usually about air support. It's usually an air support problem and or an embouchure problem. So we would give you an exercise where you're going to increase your air support, be working on air support and making sure that it's working properly, and then figuring out how you direct your air, you know, with the embouchure and the shape and the size of the embouchure, as well as the shape inside your mouth. All of those things go into just playing, you know, that fundamental skill of being able to play quietly in the high register, right? So that's just one example of a fundamental, sound fundamental, you know. Anything that's basically bugging you about your sound or how fast you can play or anything technical, those are the things that we're looking at there. So hopefully that answered your question. Okay. Oh yes, and Judith, I missed. Yes, for the next year, my goal is to be back at the level I used to be at before my 30+ years layoff. And be gentle with yourself. That's a very good goal, you know, and I think it's completely achievable. But just remember, if it doesn't happen in a year, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. You just have to be patient and chip away at it. And some things might return really, really easily, and other things might be more of a challenge. So you can always kind of be tweaking the shorter monthly and weekly goals, the weekly, monthly schedules, to make sure you're addressing the things. Okay, that's going well. I can leave that now. Let's shift over to this other thing that's not as good as I was 30 years ago. Okay. All right. So here's a template if anyone wants a screenshot of this as well. You know, it's a pretty simple template. Just this is what with the weekly schedule. Okay, what am I going to practice on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday? And one of those or more of those might be rest days. You know, a lot of us have full-time jobs or other commitments. You may not even practice every day, and that's completely fine. But on the days that you are going to practice, you can kind of schedule it out here. Okay, thank you, Kim, again. Appreciate in the chat. Okay, things to consider. So we've been through a lot. So again, you can share in the chat if you'd like, but just do you know your big why? Did it come to you when we did this exercise? And if not, what do you think you can do to find some clarity on that? Can you kind of sit back and like think back to when you first picked it up or why you're picking it up now? You know, just kind of getting really clarity on what it is. Okay. Second question, does knowing your big why change how you approach your goals and your practice schedule? So does this give you some clarity on, okay, I remember I love playing music because I want to play with other people, and yet I never play with other people. Okay, does that give you clarity on A, finding ways to play with other people, and B, what are the skills, what are the repertoire, what are all the things that can help me bring me back to that big why and bring me back to that goal? I have many whys. How should I prioritize? That's an interesting question. I would say, yeah, I would narrow it down. I would try to narrow it down to the top one or two. The ones that, you know, that's like, that kind of pulls at your heartstrings. Like if you had to quit, if someone said you're never allowed to play flute again, you know, tomorrow, I'm taking your flute, it's not allowed. What would you miss? You know, what is the thing that would disappoint you? Like the number one thing that you would miss? And that's probably your kind of your big why, you know, and one or two or three can still help you kind of keep your goals on track, I think. Okay, next question. Okay, do you think you're trying to fit in too much into your daily practice? So we have some people who they're trying to fix this, and this all at the same time. I'm terrible at everything and it all needs to be fixed right now. Probably not the best approach, which is why we say sort of the top 3 sound, top 3 technical. So when you look at the way you're practicing right now, do you think you're maybe trying to fit too much in, or Conversely, maybe too little. Maybe you're only trying to fix your messy fingers and that's all you ever practice, or you're only trying to learn this one piece for the last 6 months and you still can't play it. Something like that. I say it with a chuckle just because that kind of was me at one time in my life. Focusing way too much on one piece and just like never getting there. So, or maybe you practice once a week and you're just like struggling with motivation. So looking at, again, bringing into why you're playing the flute, and maybe that's going to help you to balance that, not too much in your daily practice and not too little. Okay. Have you considered adding a day off in your practice schedule to prevent burnout and injuries? Some people are diehard. Like if I miss a day, it's all for naught and I'm going to lose all my progress and I'm going to fail. I've met many people like this. Okay. It's not true. Actually, you need to build some rest in and take some breaks and have some days off. Okay. And then does knowing that some of your goals are going to take a long time. So some of the goals you can only achieve after a few months or even some years. Does knowing that kind of alleviate some of the pressure to fix everything right now or to achieve some level of perfection? That's another thing to consider. And then the last question I have for you to consider is, do you have a plan B for when complications arise? So we talk throughout this a lot about scheduling and planning and having it all mapped out. But then you might get so attached to that schedule, but then you get sick. You might get like pneumonia or something terrible. You might have an outside, complication that prevents you from practicing for a while. Maybe you develop an injury in your arm or something like that. What's your plan B so that you're still moving towards your goals, but it maybe doesn't look like exactly how you planned? So sometimes we say like you make your weekly, monthly schedules, and then you have a plan B. If I only have 5 minutes, I'll practice this. If I get injured, I'll just listen to this repertoire and mentally practice it for a while. What are some of the other things that you can do to keep yourself on track? All right, I'm gonna go here. Yeah, okay. I really enjoy playing music with others. However, I don't enjoy practicing alone. That's fair. Though I certainly know that I need to do that to maintain my skills, but it's not so fun. Some of this is physical. Yeah, okay. Playing too much causes pain. So for sure, practicing the practicing itself isn't always fun, right? It just isn't, unfortunately. Some of it's a grind. We call it woodshedding. Sometimes you're practicing the same thing for a long time before you see progress. So I think it's just, again, it's all about balance. And so if one of your big whys of playing the flute is that it should be fun, you cannot lose that in all of this. So maybe for you, the key is just picking one sound fundamental and one technical fundamental and making sure that's the boring part of the practice that you have to kind of just plug away at on a daily basis. But you know that you're constantly addressing those fundamentals and they are going to improve because of that. And then on the flip side, after you've done, that annoying work, just play something for fun. Just do something that you want to play. Maybe the pieces that you're hoping to play with other people, play along with recordings. Sometimes I'll do that if I've lost, especially for me, someone who was on the audition circuit for a long time. Playing a lot of excerpts, they start to become basically non-music at a certain point because they're these test pieces that you have to, do over and over again. So to keep it from becoming stale, I would blast it or put, headphones on and just play along with an orchestra because it would just give me a fresh sense of playing with people again. And then in terms of pain, you never want to play through pain ever. So it might be a matter of playing in shorter bursts. So only doing 10 or 15 minutes at a time, taking breaks, stretching, addressing weaknesses in the body that might be leading to the pain or tension. A lot of the times it's a lot of tension in the way that we're playing. So trying to release some of that. Also, sometimes we just have chronic pain that has nothing to do with the flute too, and I understand that can be a challenge too. Okay, and the opposite, I like playing for myself, to myself. Awesome. If that's what you love, then that makes you happy, then that's what you should do. Yeah, I'm pain in my arm, but after some rest, now it's fine. So yeah, so rest is important. So this is where we come back to that plan B, is okay, I was chugging along with my plan, I was practicing, everything was going really well. Oh my gosh, now I have pain. Absolutely, you take a break, you rest. Maybe try to think about what is, if the pain is really specific to a part in your arm, maybe you've got tension in this finger, maybe it's a hand position thing, maybe it's a postural thing. So kind of maybe diagnosing yourself and where that's coming from. I'm the only one. You got to be positive. Positive self-talk is the most important part of this. All right. Does anyone have any questions before I continue here? Any questions? Anything else they want to share, either live or in the chat? If not, okay, I will move on. So I want to tell you all about our program, okay, now. So I hope that the goal setting's given you some clarity on how to set up a bit of a good practice routine and a practice structure for yourself. In truth, the goal setting element is just one part of practice structure that like really helped me move forward when I got really stuck in some difficult parts of my career. And we created this entire program that really helps people transform their practice routine. We found through our own experiences that having the right approach to practicing not only levels up your skills like dramatically, but it helps you feel a lot more confident in performance. So we've been talking about performing with others, even just playing with others is causing some people anxiety. So finding that confidence to play and reach your goals, no matter what those goals are for you. Okay, the practice formula, it comes with tons of personalized support from myself and my partner, Sara Guyek, or she's not Sara Guyek anymore. Look at me. Sarah McDonald is now her married name. Scratched. Sarah McDonald and I. And we have a really, really lovely community with a super supportive group of flutists. We have courses, intensive master classes, live calls, and weekly accountability challenges. And the results of the community have been achieving has been really awesome and amazing to see. So if it interests you on school, some of you I think are part of our free group, our Fundamentally Flute. So it'd be similar to that. Let's see if I can put the link here. Yeah. Oh no, that's the wrong one. All right. I'll find it after for anyone interested. But yeah, school.com, SKOOL, and you would find the practice formula. Now, if you click join, this does not automatically join you. You're not committed. Okay. You're not charged, nothing like that. And there's no pressure to actually join the program at all. It just puts you into the queue so that we know you're interested. And then if you click join, then we can reach out to you personally to book a call and just go through whatever your personal goals are and whatever you think might be getting in the way of reaching them. It sounds like a lot of you are clear on some of the challenges that you're having. Okay, and the worst case is if you book a call with us, we will pinpoint whatever you're struggling with. We'll give you some tips and some strategies and some feedback to help you move forward. We part ways, everybody's happy, okay? Best case is we discover the program's a perfect fit and we can start working closely to help you develop your skills so that you can do that performing with confidence, playing with confidence, feel like you can move forward with confidence, okay? We are not pressury people. We do not like to pressure people at all. We really just want to spread the word about this program. We feel really, really like happy with the results that people are getting, and we just want to share it with as many people as possible. So please, even if you're not even interested in joining the program, just hit join group, book a call. We'd love to chat with you and to help you. We just really want to help as many people as possible. All right. If there's anything else, quickly, you can write it in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to call it a day. You can always find me on Facebook. You can message me on Facebook, or if you're in the school community, please just send me a chat. I'm happy to answer any more questions about goals or any specific, there were some specific questions about fundamentals or anything like that. Please, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are here to help. All right. Okay. Yeah, I don't see anything else in the chat, so I'm assuming that everyone's good. So I want to just thank everybody for coming again. This was wonderful. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day.